All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this BYOFAQ explainer. Today, we're unpacking a workplace dynamic that is, honestly, it's highly misunderstood. We're talking about conformity. Now, I know that word carries a ton of baggage, right? You hear conformity and immediately jump to character judgments. But as we're going to see today, behavioral conformity? Totally different ballgame. It's not about being a corporate drone, and having low conformity doesn't make you some rebel without a cause. It's actually way more fascinating than that. So here's a question for you. How much do you want the rulebook? Seriously, think about your own relationship with workplace structure for a second. When you kick off a brand new project, are you immediately hunting for that standard operating procedure? Like, give me the established best practices before I make a move. Or do you look at a blank slate and just light up, instantly excited by the opportunity to invent a completely new way of doing things? That gut reaction, your initial instinct towards structure, that is exactly what we're dissecting today. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll be covering the rulebook relationship, the high end, the low end, the feedback asymmetry, the gap mechanic, and finally, the honest take. Let's get to it. Section 1, defining the rulebook relationship. Remember, this is about structure and risk, not obedience. Right out of the gate, we've got to bust a major myth. This trait, it doesn't measure your backbone. It definitely doesn't measure if someone's a pushover, and it absolutely does not measure how much of a troublemaker they are. Those are judgments, not behavioral facts. Actually, conformity is simply a measure of how much a person wants to operate inside established standards, rules, and structure versus challenging them. Think of it like a dial on a soundboard. On one side, the dial says, "Show me the proven method, show me the right way, and I will execute it flawlessly." On the flip side, the dial says, "Wait, why are we even doing it this way in the first place? What if this method is completely wrong?" This one little dial quietly dictates how an employee handles details, makes decisions, and evaluates risk every single day. Moving on to Section 2, the high end, precision, process, and quality. Okay, so let's break down the behavioral hallmarks of someone who scores naturally high in conformity. Spoiler alert, you absolutely need these folks on your team. Someone on the high end inherently craves the standard, and they genuinely strive to meet it precisely. First up, they are incredibly detail-oriented and accurate. You know the type. They're the ones who effortlessly spot that glaring typo in a spreadsheet that the rest of us just scrolled right past. Precision is literally their default setting. It doesn't cost them extra energy. Second, they're highly structured and procedural. To them, rules aren't a cage, they're a feature. Third, they make decisions based on historical data. If you want to pitch them a new direction, you better bring receipts. "Here's how this has worked before" is your golden ticket argument. And finally, they are quality-driven perfectionists. For sure, they would much rather be right than be fast. To make this super sticky and easy to remember, think of our fictional shorthand for the high end, Captain Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Holt perfectly captures that exacting, by-the-book personality. And, their absolute greatest gift to any team or organization is their unmatched reliability and quality control. They're basically the steady hand on the steering wheel that keeps your whole operation from quietly drifting into chaos over time. But here is a really crucial nuance, and people get this wrong a lot. The high end is highly sensitive to feedback. Because they hold themselves to this unbelievably high internal bar, when you critique their work, it hits them hard. To them, it reads as, "You failed the standard," not just, "Hey, here's a minor tweak." So, and this is key, that thin skin, it isn't fragility or weakness. Actually, it's just the natural, logical byproduct of them caring so deeply about getting things exactly right. All right, Section 3, the low end, concepts, risk, and innovation. Now, I need to stress something big here. We are looking at an equal but totally different relationship to structure. People misunderstand this constantly. The low end is not careless, and they aren't inherently reckless. Just watch how their minds work. They are conceptual, big-picture thinkers. They deal in grand ideas and overall direction, and they're totally happy letting someone else nail down the fine print. They're also beautifully irreverent toward rules. To them, a rule is just a starting assumption, like, who says it has to be this way? It's not an absolute given from on high. Because of this, they are incredibly comfortable with risk and ambiguity. Navigating uncharted territory without a proven precedent doesn't freak them out. Honestly, new territory is exactly what interests them. This makes them your ultimate out-of-the-box contributors, consistently tossing out those unconventional ideas that the high end would literally never even dream of proposing. So who's our fictional shorthand for the low end? The iconic Ron Swanson. This is someone who implicitly trusts their own internal judgment way more than any bureaucracy, and they frankly couldn't care less about what the official procedure dictates. Their massive gift to your organization? Innovation, high risk tolerance, and the crucial guts to challenge a stale process before it makes your whole company obsolete. And let's talk about the flip side of that feedback coin. The low end is typically thick-skinned. Why? Well, because their personal identity isn't firmly anchored to a strict procedure or some fixed standard. So criticism just kind of rolls right off their backs. They simply don't internalize it the way the high end does. You can give them a super blunt note, and they'll just absorb the information and keep on moving without missing a single beat. Section 4, the feedback asymmetry. We're talking two opposite deliveries for the exact same message. Listen, this right here is arguably the most practical managerial insight of this entire explainer. If you manage people, you've got to dial in how you communicate this. Your high conformity folks, they need careful cushioning. You literally must lead with what's working, be hyper-specific, and frame your feedback as a refinement rather than a failure. Do that and they'll act on it flawlessly. But your low conformity folks, they need blunt, straight-to-the-point notes. If you try over-softening the message for them, you're just wasting everyone's time, and honestly, it can come off as condescending. Get this backward? Like, if you drop a blunt bomb on your high end and overpad the feedback for your low end, you are absolutely going to crush your best detail person and you'll bore your best risk taker to tears. Moving to Section 5, the gap mechanic. The distance between wiring and role. So what happens when an employee's natural wiring, their baseline conformity score, completely clashes with the actual day-to-day requirements of their job? Well, you usually see two major failure modes. If you shove a low conformity person into a heavy compliance, exact procedure role, you are guaranteed to get severe chafing, eventual burnout, and someone who'll probably start cutting critical corners. Why? Because they just don't value the rules. On the flip side, stick a high conformity person into a highly ambiguous figure-it-out-as-you-go role, and you will cause immense stress and totally tank their morale. They're desperately hunting for an established playbook or a standard to meet, and in that role, it literally doesn't exist. You see, behavioral friction in the workplace, it's almost always a structural mismatch, not a personal failing. Which brings us to one incredibly powerful truth. Wiring isn't the problem. The fit is. Let the profound simplicity of that statement sink in for a second. It is never about trying to fix someone or rewrite their fundamental nature. It's 100% about matching their natural relationship to structure with what their actual seat in your organization demands. And finally, Section 6, the honest managerial take. Stop moralizing, start managing. Okay, if you take nothing else away from this explainer today, please let it be this. It is time to stop moralizing. We have got to stop labeling our high-end folks as rigid sticklers and our low-end folks as careless loose cannons. Seriously, those are just character attacks dressed up as workplace observations. A truly great manager uses an understanding of conformity as a strategic seating chart and a customized feedback manual, not as a crystal ball to predict basic competence or integrity. It is never an excuse to label someone a rule breaker, and it should never, ever replace having an actual, honest conversation with your team member. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative final thought. Are you moralizing the trait, or are you actually using it to manage reality? Next time you find yourself pulling your hair out over a colleague's obsession with tiny details or their blatant disregard for the standard operating procedure, just stop. Ask yourself, am I judging their character right now, or am I simply observing their wiring? When you master that difference, you unlock a completely new level of leadership and team cohesion. Thanks for hanging out with us for this explainer. And hey, keep questioning how you view structure.